Well, something a little bit different for Gills fans this afternoon. Normally, it's myself sending the manager questions for his normal Sunday roundup, but with no game yesterday, we've asked you to send in your questions for the Gills Gaffer. And we're very lucky to have Steve because, as I know, Gaffer, you've been watching the Scotland-Serbia game on the loop for a few days. So I've torn you away from the screen. But tell you what, before I ask a question from the...
Yeah, I've spoken to...
A quick word from you on Scotland's qualification.
Well, I've spoken to all the staff up in currently playing in Slovakia, as you know, but all the staff, Steve and all his backroom team, I'm absolutely delighted for them, what they've done for themselves and what they've given to the country. I think it's 23 years next June since we were last in the European Championships. I remember it well, of course. Many years after that, signed Colin Henry and Paul Gascoigne, and that became famous for Gaz's little chip over and the volley into the net. And I've travelled to Villa Park to watch a good mate of mine, Coisty, score a stunning goal from about 30 yards. So long time since we've been there. I'm sure COVID permitting, the Tartan Army will travel in huge numbers. So, and I'll obviously be one of them.
Absolutely. Actually, that brings me nicely on to the first question from a fan, from Michael. I think the gist of what he was asking was, from a personal point of view, would you rather get Gillingham to the playoffs this season or see Scotland beat England in the Euros?
Oh, Gillingham get promotion, of course, or the playoffs. Absolutely, 1,000,000%. I think the one thing I can't do, unless we unearth a gem very quickly, we cannot affect what my country are doing in the Euros. I'll leave that to Steve Clarke. He's done an absolute stunning job, which I thought he would when he came in. If you look back at the media reports at the time, I did say it right, what a brilliant appointment it was. He's a gifted coach. I've seen him at close quarters, and a man I know reasonably well and very well. So, yeah, I'll take the Gills in the playoffs and promotion, and we'll take care of the Euros itself.
Absolutely. A couple of people wanted to ask what you and Paul Rayner did on your day off, in inverted commas. I know you were scouting. It's not really a day off, was it? But what did you get up to?
Well, we were both at games. We'll keep, obviously, quiet so games and stuff are up for obvious reasons. But Paul was out at a game, Ian Pledge was at a game, and of course, I was away at a game as well. So we're all out there working different things we were looking at, future opposition, potential recruits. Long chat with Paul and Ian separately, of course, driving home from the game that I was at and again today. So, yeah, staff worked hard. Players needed a couple of days down, mentally and physically. But I know they'll be in tomorrow morning as well. We'll be in. They'll be buzzing.
A question from Ben, based on scouting and looking for players. Are there specific attributes that you look for in certain players in certain positions? And if so, what are they?
Well, you'd have to almost go through the remit of a starting 11, if you like, and depending on what system. But I think we didn't hide it back in the summer that we had to go younger. And with that, obviously, had to come athleticism and ability that we could either foresee or have witnessed you play at the level. So there was mixes in that. But largely, it's the majority of our group, unless you were with us last season, has been lads who's been asked to step up, whether it be a big Verdane at the top of the pitch who's been asked to step up from a brilliant season and overachieving it at Northampton in League Two, to the young players that we brought in on loan, to the other youngsters that we've signed. So the remit we look for is the majority of the time now where we go, look, age will be a factor, obviously. We like pace in our team. I think we've got a lot of pace in our team. Certainly defensively, we've got good pace. We could probably be doing something a little bit more pacey up top, but they have to be good enough to play at the level, of course. So technically good. Height and build is a factor these days as well. I think you have to be twice as good as the normal player for the level, if you like, if you're small and frail. But if you look at the boy Azuma, you can look at him and he excels at the level. So there'll always be exceptions. The boy Reid at Peterborough, there'll be exceptions. But for us, it's about energy, it's about desire, it's about statistics that show you play a lot of football, because League One is unforgiving with Saturday, Tuesday.
Thank you for that. So the next question I've got, again, I suppose relating to scouting, it's from Jeremy. Will you be looking to strengthen the squad in January, or are you happy with what you currently have in the squad?
Well, we're not happy, obviously. I think I described it as a little bit frustrated where we are. I think there's first and foremost, we've got a lot of good players, and there's a lot more to come from these players. These youngsters have come in, and when you go from, say, Scott Robertson, 10 games in a calendar year, full minutes, to suddenly playing 10 games for the Gills in 6-7 weeks, certainly tests you, physically and mentally, especially mentally with some of the younger players. So we're hoping to strengthen the window, or we'd be foolishly looking for players. I've had 2 or 3 great meetings with our chairman. We have to be careful with every penny we spend. The numbers have to balance. I'm well aware of that as an experienced manager. But what I would say is we will be, making 1 or 2 additions and moving 1 or 2 on as well, because we have to balance it.
Lovely. This is from Jonathan. He says, we're 11 games in now. Is our current league position below your own personal expectations? And if it is, what do you think needs to be done to improve that position and gain more consistent points?
Yeah, Jonathan, it's a good question, but it's frustrated is the word I feel about when I look at the league table, because I don't think there's any doubt, not any doubt whatsoever amongst anyone on the staff or the players, even a lot of neutrals and other managers have accepted it. We should probably have 7 or 8 more points on the board, and that allows for days when we've got beaten and deserve to get beaten is what happened. If you'd have added the 7 or 8 more points, you could see that where it would take us. It would take it to probably 8th, 9th, 10th in the table, just below that playoff group. And that's where I've seen us being, and that's where we will be. Over the season, you have to play everyone home and away. And I heard one manager say after his game yesterday on the radio that they had the toughest start of every club in League One. I don't think he's looked at Gillingham's start, who we've played and who we've not, given league tables, given size of resources available to build the groups. We've had an extremely tough start, but it doesn't mean, of course, that we're going to go and beat the other teams. It's tough, but I think it gives us statistically a better chance of winning a lot more games as we go forward towards Christmas.
Just on the other side of that, Paul's asked the question, considering the injuries that we have had, and let's face it, we've had a fair few, considering that, are you pleased with how the team has performed so far?
Oh, yes. Well, absolutely. If you consider we lost Mark Byrne, I know it was last season, but he was going to be a big part of what we were going to be about. But Byrne had decided to stay in Ireland and respected that because someone was ready, waiting and willing to give him a contract. I think Mark come back and played as he said he would. We then quickly lost Stuart O'Keefe out for a long time. If it's not the season, it's 80%, 90% of it. We lost Carl Dempsey on the opening day. We lost Scott Robertson and Eccles within a week of each other. We lost Jack Bonham with concussion. We've lost Jordan Graham for a few days as well. So we've lost key players at big times still. But the good thing about this group is that we don't make anyone a promise they're going to start football matches. They have to be in the here and now. They have to be current, working hard in training. And I heard some of the best managers in the Premier League say since the international break that they judge it as much on training as they do in games. And the thing I've spoke to the players about before we broke off is that if you're working hard and putting in training, then you're going to be starting matches because they've all got ability.
Coming on to a slightly different angle from Sean, there have been some strange results in the league this season, and I think not just League One, but in the Prem, the Champ, in League Two as well. Do you think our division is more open this season, or do you still believe there are standout sides?
No, I believe for sure it's more open. I think it's as tough as it's been, and I'm going on record as saying this since Leeds United were last in League One. It's a long time. The big clubs in the league this season have got the big resources. They've got massive players. If you look at Sunderland, who recently came to Priestfield, they had 7 on the bench that would start every week for every other club in League One. That's just a simple fact. They would have all, if not 6 of them, would have all started. But it doesn't give you a right to win football matches. I know they beat us that day. But it doesn't give you a right to win football matches. I think these are unprecedented times with no supporters. we're one of the clubs that probably suffer more than most, because that rain amend gets you, I think I said it, 8-9 points a season, with helping get other teams to buckle late in games and bring the troops home with the points. So it's unprecedented times, but I think it's in every league now. You look at the Premier League. I'm looking 2 weeks ago, seeing Southampton top of the Premier League. Mm. And I seen a brilliant tweet from the media department saying, "Stop the clock." I thought it was brilliant. I stopped the count, a bit like Donald Trump. But I thought it was brilliant, because I thought that's one of the few teams they'll ever top of the Premier League.
Stephen's asked a question which you've kind of answered, but he said, do you personally miss shooting towards that rain amend in the second half? Because if we are behind, say with 10 minutes to go, it is almost like a 12th man, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Listen, you only have to go back to our game to Priestfield with Peterborough United, and I think we win the game 4-2. And I spoke about afterwards how the Rainer men got Gills back in the game. They did. And I spoke about going there as an opposition manager, and I've had more than enough to take over the years off them and Gordon Road and everywhere else. But I think they're absolutely brilliant supporters. They get behind the team. You only need to give them a chink of effort. That's all you need to give the fans here. A chink of effort, a chink of spirit, and they'll get the best out of you. And they hate losing, and they make up for it when they're winning. That's for sure.
This is a question I'm going to ask you. Have you found it, I don't mean this to sound negative, but have you found it more difficult to motivate the players before a big game when there's no fans in the ground?
No, not really. I don't think so. That's probably a question for a player. But from my point of view, we're young. It's still exciting for some of our players to be playing in League One. Still exciting for me. I think I said to you, I woke up with the Woking game, and the first thing I commented to my daughter is it's FA Cup day for us. FA Cup day is magical. And when I wake up on a match day, when I wake up next Saturday morning or preparing Thursday, Friday or all week for Charlton, we're playing Charlton Athletic. You know, we've just played Sunderland. We've just played Portsmouth. We've just been to Ipswich, to Portman Road, a historic ground in English football. They're fantastic games. Now, if I'm feeling like that and I'm over 20 years a manager, then I know our players are feeling it. And I think in the words of Jordan Graham, this competition is magic this year, Gaffer. And that's a young man who's producing performances that make him the most dangerous opponent in League One for sure.
Someone did ask about the FA Cup draw. Of course, we've drawn Exeter at home in round 2. Just give us your thoughts on that draw.
Oh, a really good team. Long time since they've lost a football match. Good young manager. Good players. Some of them I know. I know the Nicky Laws and the Sweeneys. I know the experienced boys. 4 or 5 academy boys they brought through over the last 2 years. Well, we're close to being that number ourselves. We've got Joe Walsh around us every day and he's playing. We've got Jack Tucker. We've got Henry Woods who's knocking on the door, not just with a little hand. He's knocking on the door with a sledgehammer because his performances have been that good. But yeah, back to Exeter, good side, football inside, attacking minded side, whop the socks off. The most dangerous opponent from the league below that we could have faced is Exeter, especially in the current run of form. They progressed against a non-league club, AFC Fard, last week, and they made, I think it was 7-8 changes. They made 6-7 yesterday again to change it back. So they've got strength and depth as well.
Just going back to the fans inside the ground, Stan's asked, with the lack of fans in the stadiums, is it more challenging for the players without the energy to feed off? And does it arguably make away games easier to negotiate without the pressure of the home supporters?
I think the second question first in that, is it easier at away grounds? I think that depends on the home fans. I think it doesn't make it, it certainly sort of makes it easier for teams to come to Priestfield than what it would with the fans in, because the fans are very vocal. But there is a lot of grounds in League One where you go and they could have the average attendance in, but it's still very quiet. So it's not all grounds, you get a humding atmosphere. So I'm not quite sure it's true like that, but does it make it any more difficult for us to travel and win at Portman Road without supporters? Another ground with great support, a club with a great home support. So perhaps yes. But I'd say over the piece, it's a bit mixed, Phil.
Lovely. This is from Tom. This is again regarding scouting, actually. When you're not scouting players yourself, the members of your staff are doing it, how much trust do you have to put in your coaches and your scouts to know they are looking for exactly the same type of player that you're looking for?
Well, we judge that with the members of staff that do look for us, our scouting people we've got around the country. We judge it over a period of time. You can never judge it on, on one thing, but often we'll send them to matches. And we've got players in mind in those matches, but we don't tell them the players. We'll say, come back and give me the 3 best players, for example. If we set them to watch, and I'm making this up, if we set them to watch my old club Crawley, it might be the brief, come back with the 3 best players on the pitch and why. And then if our boys know in there that we've been either identified ourselves, if we've looked at myself and Paul, it would surprise us. It wouldn't give us alarm bells unless it was happening successively, if you like, continually. So that's the type of thing we do. Or there might be a more specific task if Paul's looked, if I've looked, and we might just want a totally independent view, then we'd name him, go and watch Steve Evans at Crawley and tell me about him. So it's, but you have to trust them. If you don't trust them as a good assistant manager, it's other than manager chairman, the next most important role is manager and assistant. I trust Paul Reader with my life, and I mean that. I don't say those words lightly. Trust him with my life. So unless you can trust your assistant with your life, that ultimately becomes a problem. And that's why you see a lot of young managers only work with an assistant at one club, and the next thing, if they get a job, he doesn't go with them because ultimately they've not trusted them.
Aaron's asked, if you're watching a player from a lower division, what makes you firmly believe that they are capable of making a step up?
You have to go with your own football opinion. You have to look for them in certain situations in the match. If it's a striker, does he get a hold of the ball? I mean, he's still going to be playing against good players in League Two if you pick the game right. Is he going to be instinctive in the box? You have to match that with the fit that you're looking to add. You don't just go and look for a striker and say, I'm looking for any striker. We were looking for now. We'd look for somebody who's really quick up top, who can go in behind and give teams a real problem with pace. We've got Dominic, but we need another one, and we know that, other than playing Jordan up there. So it's just a bit measure. Probably a good answer is take a measurement through the opposition. So if we were looking at League Two players yesterday, you can be rest assured the ones we were looking at would be playing against teams that we thought would get good players in it as well.
This is from Cara, and she's asked you, how frustrating has it been for the majority of this season not having been able to name a consistent starting 11?
Very good question, Cara. And if you were in my office Thursdays and Fridays or Mondays leading up to games, then you'd realise how frustrating it is. Very, very frustrating. And it's even more frustrating when kick-off comes because you're going into battle without some of our big players. And we're not, and we don't claim to be one of the top 7 or 8 squads in the league in terms of the resources to put that together. So our squad members, if we can be called that, although we're all in it at the minute, our squad members wouldn't be as good as what others can pick on. So it's a double-edged sword. Very, very frustrating since the start of the season, but hopefully in the next few weeks we get a little bit of luck and we get these boys back.
You mentioned a few times this season about having, if not one of the youngest squads in the EFL, possibly the youngest squad. From a personal perspective, have you had to adjust how you manage younger players? Because perhaps what you say to them may have a different effect to when you say it to an older player.
Yeah, very much so. Listen, you don't be a manager for 22 years in a very successful track record without being able to adapt to times different from 15 years ago. I was having a chat with an ex-player of mine, of course, in Swindon Town, Lee Power. And we were just talking about how, not only me, but how he would be spoken to by other managers 10, 15 years ago. You have to evolve with the times. The kids are, and I've got kids as old as our players, they're more sensitive to it now. But at the same token, they still want the truth. How you tell them is the same content, and that's what I always tell players and signers. Same content. How we deliver that message now can be slightly different, and it has to be slightly different, and with a more positive aspect to it rather than just negativity.
again, I don't mean this question negatively, but how is it easier managing younger players? Is it more enjoyable managing younger players?
Yeah, I think it's easier to the extent that young players get the right type, want to learn. They want to do it right. If I speak to Eccles and Drysdale, who've come from Matt Robbins at Coventry, gifted manager, a gifted coach, and if I look at Robertson, who's come down from Celtic, and the Arsenal kids, these have got some of the best youth coaches in the land working with them when they're at their parent clubs. But they come to us is that adaptation into first team football, where, as Trey Coyle said after the Arsenal game, it suddenly becomes a dawn of reality that the 23s don't really matter if you get beat, as long as you're developing. First team is everyone's living, and first team's everyone's passion. So a summary and answer to your question, yes, I believe it is. Too many of the older lads around League One and League Two think they are going to be a manager next week, or they could be. And as often as proven to be the case in recent times, these young men get jobs and just systematically fail because they've no experience and they've not learnt their trade. And if there is any managers out there, unless you're the elites, if you like, unless you're the Steven Gerrard, even Steven Gerrard was managing the academy side, wasn't he? So he went and learned a lot about his trade before stepping up to Glasgow Rangers. So it's easier to manage younger players for a number of reasons, providing the younger players are the right ones.
You've been a manager, for over 20 years now, at different levels. How, in that time, can you learn very quickly which of your players will make good managers?
I think what it gives you is, by talking to them and chatting to them, it gives you good ideas as to who you think will go and progress, either into a coaching or management role. When there's not many clubs now who's going down the head coach road with a director of football, a sporting director above them. So the DNAs for that football club is discussed between the board and the sporting director. And then the head coach, if you like, has to buy into it. But yes, it does. We've got people in our camp that in future years I can see them become a manager. I think possibly in time, not immediate, but in time, Paul Rayner will want to be a manager. I would want to be a manager if I was him. He's had opportunities. He's always said no. At league level, he's had opportunities in League Two in the last 12 months. He's said no. So that would happen. And certainly, I see people like Max Hamer who would love to Bristol Rovers. I see Max in time be someone who's going to coach or manage. We've got Stuart Keefe in the building. I see the same young Kel Dempsey. He's 24. He's got now 10 years to play, minimum. So I see people like that, and I see them as could be managers.
Liam's asked the question, from this point until Christmas, we've got an awful lot of fixtures. And of course, that's the same for most clubs due to the fact we started later. At the turn of the year, ideally, where would you like us to be in the table?
Ideally top.
Yeah.
We're not going to be top. I think the answer is if we're in the top half, if we're 4 or 5 points from the playoff group, I think it'll be an outstanding first half of the season, considering some weeks we're not being able to fill a bench with the required number of substitutes, injuries to key players. We've been very unlucky and carried more unluckiness and more Monday phone calls from the head of referees than I've ever known about decisions that's gone against us. You have to believe they turn over the course of the season. It's not about anyone's honesty. They just make mistakes. And we've been on the book a lot of them. So I would say if we're in that top half of the table, top 10, we're 4 or 5 points off the playoffs. If you said to me we're mid-January, I'll take it now, because I genuinely said at the start of the season, and people can go back and look, we'll be a much better team in the second half of the season. Statistically, all my teams are.
Yeah, you just nicked my next question. I was going to say, historically, over the course of your career, the second half of the season has been more fruitful. Is that just because, I suppose, from your point of view, you gain momentum and you find out over the season what systems work and what doesn't, potentially?
Yeah, I think more important than that, I've either just had one promotion, so you go up into a higher level and you need to change some of the players more than you would wish to change, if you like. And I just seem to have been at clubs that summer after summer it seems to be a rebuild, and that's not ideal. I looked at the clubs that have been successful. Like when I went from 2-1 with Rotherham, I kept largely the same squad. Crawley 2-1, largely the same squad, and then both went on to be successful in League One. So from that point of view, it's we don't want to be making lots of changes, but sometimes they're forced upon you. So consistency would be good and be key. But second half of the season, that means we've had a good look at it, Phil, with a new group for the first half of the season. Everyone's had opportunities to show us what they can do. We now almost take the approach, right, we've got the car in the garage. The race is tomorrow. We've been trialling for 3-4 months. What do we need to fine tune here? So if it's a position or two, let's try and do it. Obviously, I need to support the chairman to do that.
Did have a question come through this morning, and forgive me because I've not noted down his name, but it was a good question. He said, at the start of every season, particularly this one, primarily is the first objective to try and better what you did the previous season?
I think it depends on what club you are. I think there's a lot of clubs that, certainly in League One and League Two this year, the first criteria to make sure they're in that league next season as a minimum. And I think when you are ourselves with the lowest resources, the first thing that the chairman doesn't want me doing is fighting a relegation battle. I think he had that 3 or 4 years and staying up on last days and things like that. We don't want that. But my personal objective was to improve on what we did last year, so we finished 10th. I think we might have got involved in the playoff shake at the end of last season. We had a lot of advantageous fixtures. One club in the top 6 to play more games at home than away. All teams, most of the teams, not all, but most of the teams, nothing to play for any real chest. So I thought we'd get involved in it. And that's why I'm saying to you now, if we can be in the top half of the table when we get into January, let's fine tune it, and then we will finish above where we finished last year for sure.
There's also a question that came through. I think I already know the answer, but looking back as a manager, is there one particular manager or coach that you've always looked up to and had inspiration from? I guess the answer is Sir Alex Ferguson, but perhaps aside from the great Fergie, is there anybody else?
Well, the great Fergie certainly gets the highest. There's two managers that I look up to very much. Craig Brown, ex-Scotland manager, who was my manager. I still speak to Craig once, twice a week, mostly via text these days. He's getting in the habit of texting. But he was the last man to take Scotland to the European Championships, and Steve Clark's just done it. So obviously, Craig the other night I think the whole of Scotland was texting each other, to be fair. So he certainly comes into it. And Brendan Rodgers, of course, is nearby me at Leicester. Brendan has been a source of an ear for me many times, and me to him. So what a job he's doing at Leicester. It's incredible. He done it at Celtic. I was gutted when he left, absolutely gutted. Nothing against Lenny, but he's come down to Leicester, and I know they had the poor end to the season, but I think when you break off and you suddenly go from the way they were playing to no crowds and the whole world just changed, then you can understand why he just couldn't get them going again. But he's proved what he's doing again this year. So I would certainly say Brendan, and I'd certainly say Craig Brown, but the master of all is Sir Alex.
Do you still pick up the phone from time to time to other managers if there's a situation where perhaps you haven't dealt with it before? You still pick up the phone and ask someone else how they might deal with it, or have they dealt with something similar?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I think the days you're not picking up the phone is the days you're not asking for perhaps opinions. You're a little bit lost on it. I think I'll pick up the phone to Brendan, as I've said. I'll pick up the phone to Moisey. I'll pick up the phone to Lenny, and I can keep going. There's various managers around the Premier League that I'll speak to. Not on an every week basis. I'm not there to annoy them. But sometimes I'm asked them to see Bruce. Bruce is a great friend. We'll win a game, and I got a text or a phone call from Bruce. He's just saying, "Well done, mate." Brown. Of course, it took me to read his history to realise how many games he started for Gillingham. An incredible amount, almost 100 games. Always gets missed on his CV. They always talk about Man United, don't they? So
start with us. Yeah, good, fantastic centre back.
Yeah, and he tells a very truthful and wonderful story about how he ended up at Gills as well, and trials with Peter Beardsley. So you look at that and you think, yeah, those managers at the end of the phone. And do you know what? I think I know probably 15 or so in the Premier League. I can call any one of them now. If they don't pick up the phone, they'll be back in half an hour. So, and that just comes with understanding in the game, and people want to help.
move it back to closer to home then. So this is from Alex. He says, I follow the youth team just as much as the first team. Are there any players in the setup at the moment that have caught your eye, and any in that group that you think could become regular first team players?
Well, the answer is I've not seen enough of them this season now, Paul, because of COVID issues and because of bubbles, we're training at different bases.
Yep.
So, and they're all playing when we're playing. But I think we're back at our own training ground by the end of the month. And the pivotal time for these kids anyway is going to be December, January. That's when decisions get made, not next May. All our kids have an entitlement to be told in January whether there's a plan for them to take them forward or not. But the way the criteria has got to be, Phil, when they get to the end of their 2-year cycle at that academy level, they have to be capable of playing for what we call our under-23 team, our training ground team, when we play West Ham, when we play Queen's Park Rangers, when we play Millwall, when we play Charlton closed door. We don't play with the guys that's played on the Saturday for us. We'll play with the bench. And it then gets made up with the youth team players. They have to be capable of coming in and out and playing, because we don't have 4 years after they're 18, 19 to get them in. And you'll say, well, is that harsh? I think it's the way football is now. More and more now, football's getting younger. If you look at the Tuckers, the Walshes, the Robertsons, the Eccles, the Drysdales, even Conor Ogilvie, he looks so experienced. He's in his early 20s, So the answer is, I'm not 100% sure qualified to make that call, but I will be come the Christmas period.
Of course, the youth team are in action this week, I gather, in the second round of the Youth Cup, and we'll keep fans updated with their progress.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there this week watching.
Absolutely, great. This is from Nathan. What's your favourite goal as Gillingham boss so far?
Well, I think every winning goal is a favourite goal. I suppose if there's one stuck out of mind, it's Conor Ogilvie.
Yeah.
Last few in Sunderland at home at the Redmond, where it's a fantastic finish from Conor. He finishes it like Van Persie. He swivels, keeps it up and volleys it in. It's an incredible goal. And that's one because it was late, because of the calibre and the quality of the opposition, and because of the finish.
Lovely, thank you for that. A question from Lee Clifton. It says, regarding the substitutes ruling, which has been spoken about by a number of Premier League managers, including Jurgen Klopp and Pep, do you think increasing the number to 5 subs is a good idea?
Listen, I think if we'd all had the same quality of substitutes that Jurgen have and Pep have, if you're in the Premier League, you'd vote for it, wouldn't you? But the reality is, if you're Sean Dyche at Burnley and you've got 7 subs, you've not got 5 as good as what Man City's got sitting next to you. Because every one of those substitutes at Man City or Man United or Liverpool is an outstanding international. And I think the further you get down the league, if you go to, the teams that find the West Brom, if they've got 3 subs versus 5, Jurgen could be bringing on lads that have got 100 caps and are just outstanding quality. So I would say if you're at the top level, that top 5 or 6, I understand why they've voted for it. If you're at the other end, you'd understand why you curtailed it.
If League One managers are asked to vote, and I don't know if you have been yet, would you vote for 5?
No, I wouldn't vote for 5. And I know there's the amount of soft tissue injuries because of the time we had off. We COVID, we had 7-8 months off, and that gives you hundreds. But I wouldn't vote for it because we're in the same situation as the Premier League, aren't we? I only told you about, just say our supporters, go and look at the bench that Sunderland had when they played us. And compare that, he can make 5 and I can make 3 to what I had. It's an unfair advantage. But if the vote was taken by all the respective football clubs and the vote was to go with the 5, we'd go with the 5. I wouldn't complain about it. I'd just get on with it. I'd know that if they're making a 4th and 5th sub, they're bringing more quality onto the pitch than I can.
A few people have asked this question. Are you able to give us an injury update? I think you mentioned Stuart earlier, but Stuart O'Keefe and the likes of Jacob Mellis, are we likely to see them before the end of the season?
Yeah, I think Mellis has got a real chance. I had an update with Gary Hemmings, our physiotherapist, and Jacob's consultant on Friday late afternoon. The prognosis is good on that one. We could see Jacob back in the next 3-4 weeks, right, from thinking it was the end of the season. That's just because he'll get the larger part of the operation that needs to be done, but it's purely for about moving forward with his life rather than affecting his football. So Jacob made a big call to say, I can get that done next summer. Just get me ready and out there to play football matches. No ignorance or not training, not training so many days and rest. It's back in full or not. And the consultant reckoned he could be back in 3 weeks. So now he'll be on a rehabilitation program with Gary and James Russell, and they'll get him up to speed. And I would probably plan, I think Gary might agree with me, that he'll be training with the group 3 weeks on, 3 weeks tomorrow.
That's really good news. I imagine Stuart is not quite as close, though.
Yeah, Stuart's making huge progress because he's such a great athlete, isn't he? That's why. I could see Stuart back in the camp and playing in March.
Right.
Brilliant. It still gives us March and April and a bit of May with him. We miss Stuart. We miss his energy. We miss his passion. We miss his leadership. The only thing we don't miss is his banter, which is awful. But I don't tell him I said that. Now but Stuart, the medical team have done great, but he drives a lot of that, Stuart. He's running about 75% speed. So there's a long time between now and Christmas to get him up to the other parts of his speed, and of course twisting and turning, and then I'd probably say need a month of football or 6 weeks of football to be considered for us.
I've got one more question to ask you, but before that, I'll ask you one from myself.
Okay.
How much trust do you have to place in your fitness guys and your sports science guys? Of course, you want your players back ASAP. Everyone does. But how much trust you have to put in them to make sure they recover properly?
Yeah, we've got two of the best, and they got a tough time from me. I remind them every day that their job is to get players available for selection, not about having busy treatment rooms. And Gary hates it, to be fair, when it's like that. He doesn't hate it because he's working hard or working extra, because he works 24 hours a day for us anyway. So, and the same with James Russell. I give them a tough time because they know the remit, but in saying that, they're two of the best, and they're both capable of working at a much, much higher level, and hopefully that'll come for them, because we must all aspire to be as high as we can, but not yet. They've got much more work to do for me.
Just finally, 4 or 5 people asked this question. Can you please ask the manager what his assessment of this season is so far, and have you changed your objectives?
No, objectives have not changed. To finish higher than we finished last year, and have less points differential if we miss that top group than what we had last year. That objective doesn't change. The frustrations don't change. I was very frustrated when we stopped playing and we all got judged on a points per game average. It was not just unfair to Peterborough United and Durham McAntony, because they were certain to make the playoffs and they got robbed of it. It was wholly unfair enough, because I think we'd have been in there too. So, but I think we're still capable of the top 10. I think we need to sit down and be very pragmatic on 23 games, see exactly where we are. Ask your supporters to do this in their own right, if they're me. So when you get to January, here's a simple equation. If you want to keep a player and go forward with them and work with them and have them around not only for the summer but beyond, then look at our entire squad and just write yes next to his name. If you don't rate the player, he's not for you, just write no. And then you're going to have the ones that you go, well, he's a maybe. And in the words of Alex Ferguson, maybes are no, son, because you have a doubt. So that'll be the criteria that we're taking to play in January. And then over and above all of that comes that you maybe have a couple of maybes that you're saying, well, they become no's then on that criteria, and then it becomes about affordability. But forget about affordability, just take the squad, write the squad down. Gills fans can do it. Yes is yes. So you want to keep that player. He can play 30, 35 starts for the Gills, and we have a good season. So that's a yes. There'll be players in there that supporters will say, he's not for me, and that's an individual thing. And I'm repeating myself now, but you say then there were the ones that'll go, and there'll be a few of these, they'll go, well, maybe I can remember he did well there, but he didn't do well, and he becomes a no. And that's your squad to build on.
Gaffer, thank you very much. Before I let you go, obviously we're back in action next week. So is it back on the training pitch tomorrow? Is it a fairly routine week?
No, we're back to routine. We're back tomorrow. We're we'll be working hard tomorrow, working hard Tuesday, starting to prepare for Charlton. Spoken to Lee Boyer quite a bit recently. I think they're an unbelievable run, aren't they? They're a bit like an extra. I think they're unbeaten in 10. They've had some magical results in recent weeks. Seen off Sunderland comfortably, seen off Fleetwood reasonably comfortably. Made some really good additions. Listen, Charlton Athletic can go to the marketplace and sign an out-of-contract lad who played his 98th game for Wales the other night. So, just gone to them, I kind of know reasonably well too. When you can go and bring in players like that to your group. And then further, when the teams get announced next Saturday and we're going to be up for it, we're going to be up for the battle. But have a look at Charlton's bench and you'll realise how strong that Lee's squad is. But it's a tough challenge, but we'll be ready. And the only shameful thing is we haven't got 10,000, 11,000 fans in the stadium. Brilliant support from Charlton would be there. But more importantly, the men in God Road would be packed with people fighting for the cause, and it is a cause.
Well, touch wood, that will come sooner rather than later, and I think everyone would agree with me. But Steve, for now, thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure we'll catch up with you during the week.
Yeah, and I'd just say to the Gills fans, away from football, don't let things get you down. These are tough times for anyone. Don't be kidded that you see players and you see coaching staff and managers and that, still doing their football and still thinking that everything in their little life is all right. It's not. We all have difficult times. We've got family and loved ones who have difficult times. So stay strong and on a down moment, and pick up the phone. I've already started my plans, as you know, Phil, for to be working with feeding the homeless in Gillingham and Meals on Wheels and the elderly and things like that I'll be involved in all over Christmas. And if anyone like that, anyone connected with Gills, supporters, anyone, just needs a chat, get yourself out to Priestfield, just wait, it's coming in. We'll have 10-minute chat and picture up of it. Maybe you can help me pick my team.
Steve, thank you very much. We'll speak to you during the week.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you very much.